No, Mayor.
We'll call the regular meeting of the Dual Economic Development Authority for Tuesday, July 10th, 2018, 8 a.m. to order. First item on the agenda is roll call. We do have a quorum, so we'll go on to item number 2, approve the minutes of the last meeting.
I'll move them.
Second.
We got a motion, a second to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Any discussion on anything? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 3 from EDA staff regarding administrative activities during the month of June 2018. Heather.
All right, good morning. Note for the Section 8 report, we had 87 vouchers on the program for the month of June. Housing assistance payments to landlords exceeded disbursements from HUD by just over $1,000 for the month. Administrative fee disbursements exceeded expenses by about $250. Note on pages 3 and 4 of your report the unaudited balances, and this is our fiscal year end of June 30th, so that's how we end the year there. And note on page 5 of your report, 85 vouchers on the program as of July 1st with a waiting list of 63. Moving on to the public housing report. Note on pages 6 and 7 of your report, monthly and year-to-date program activity. As of June 30th, program expenses have exceeded revenues by just over $22,000, and that is also the end of our fiscal year for that program. On page 8, Broadway House is fully leased with 61 on the waiting list, and on page 9, there's 1 vacancy in the family units with 26 on the waiting list, and we do have someone lined up to move into that house on August 1st. Last month I reported that on May 8th, the President notified Congress he was proposing rescissions to prior year appropriations, including HUD's 2015, 16, and 17 unobligated balances in the Public Housing Capital Fund. Congress had 45 days to review and act on the proposed rescission package. The proposal passed in the House but failed in the Senate. The EDA has an unobligated balance of just over $46,000 in the 2017 grant, and it does appear these funds will now be available for us to use toward projects in addition to the 2018 grant. So that's good news. Moving on to the EDA fund on page 10 of your report, note cash assets of $733,500. Wanted to give you an update on the 2 bids we received for lots in the Milford Heights subdivision. On the first bid, the city attorney advised us that a majority of homeowners must agree to the covenant change, allowing 3 years to build on Lot 7, Block 4. Staff mailed ballots to all homeowners and gave them 30 days to respond. If we receive 15 yes votes agreeing to the time extension, we will proceed with the closing on that lot sale. The EDA owns 9 lots, so we have 9 votes, which are yes votes because the board approved the extension at the last board meeting. So far, we have received 5 additional yes votes and 1 no vote from other homeowners at the time of this report. And no other votes have been received since that time, so that is still where we stand. I believe we need 1 more yes vote to proceed. On the other lot bid that was received, the city attorney advised us that we cannot allow an exemption to the covenant change, exempting the owner from building a house on Lot 2, Block 4, due to Minnesota State Statute Section 469-105, Subdivision 5, because the property would not be used for its original intent of building homes, and the bidder has been notified of that decision. Any
And it's decided not to
questions on
bid?
that?
And then it's decided not to bid?
Well, in their original bid, they had stated that if they could not be exempted from that, they withdraw.
Right, so they have withdrawn, or we don't know yet? Or
Well, we sent them a letter that we could not exempt them and that we consider their bid withdrawn.
Okay. Oh, okay, got it. Thank you.
So just to clarify too, I think we were going to consider the possibility of changing the covenants, but statute prohibits us from doing that as well. So basically it's done.
Correct.
Any any purchase, any person wishing to purchase a lot would have to build a home on it without question,
Correct.
due to statute.
Right,
Okay.
because of state statute.
Okay,
It's not as simple as just changing the covenant with majority vote, because the state statute requires it to be
Oh.
used for its original intent.
Now we know.
Moving on, we wanted to give a brief update on the Housing Institute team projects. One of the team projects is to create a regional website and also to create a commercial to promote the website. The promotional commercial has been completed. When the website is ready to go live, we'll start sharing the commercial on the local access channel and social media to create some buzz and direct people to the new website. Staff is also preparing information on the remaining Milford Heights lots to present as a package to developers at the September Housing Institute retreat. Moving on then to the property rehab loan program on pages 11 and 12 of your report. Note available funds of $266,000. A limited loan application has been approved in the amount of $5,000. I believe that's the first time we've awarded a loan under that program, and $5,000 is the maximum amount allowed. We still have two commercial property rehab loan applications pending. I believe those do not need board approval. They're $25,000 or less. I think they're just waiting for the final paperwork to be able to approve those loans. Moving on to the rental property fund on page 13 of your report, note cash assets of $81,500. And finishing with the Garden Terrace report on pages 14 and 15. Garden Terrace has 87 units leased with 53 on the waiting list. There's currently one vacancy due to a turnover last month, and they have received 2 move-out notices for August. On-site staff has had a local vendor out there to measure, and they're currently working on a quote to replace the 2 garage furnaces. We're hoping to bring that back to the next meeting to approve the project and move forward with soliciting bids. We would like to get those furnaces replaced before winter if possible. Any questions on?
Anybody have anything for Heather?
When's the last time we purged the waiting lists? That due again, or is?
For all of the programs or
Yeah,
one?
maybe, I don't know if we do them all at the same time, or,
It's probably time. I think it was last done last May or June, so we probably should,
May of June of
Look
the
at-
previous year.
of last year. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it probably is too then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions? Seeing none, entertain a motion accepted.
I'll
move-
offer a motion.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item number 4A, consider accepting a proposal for participation in a project-based voucher program. Heather?
All right, as you are aware, the EDA is in the process of converting 4 Section 8 housing choice vouchers into project-based vouchers. This was approved by the EDA on April 11th, 2017. And we've been working our way through all of the HUD regulations that go along with that since that time. We are required by HUD to solicit proposals and provide broad public notice of the opportunity to submit proposals for these vouchers. A public notice ad was published in the New Ulm Journal on May 15th, 22nd, and 29th, 2018. The deadline to submit a proposal was 30 days after the final publication. So the deadline was set for June 29th, 2018. One proposal was received for these vouchers, and that was received from Community Housing Development Corporation, and they would like to utilize these 4 vouchers at the State Street Apartment project. They submitted the required application and attachments prior to the deadline. We did score the proposal, even though it was the only one received, and they did score very high. They received 110 of a possible 120 points. The 10 points they did not receive, for those points, they would have had to have a live-in staff person providing support services to the tenants, and they are not doing that, so they did not receive those points, but they received all of the other possible points. So it's a strong proposal, and we do recommend accepting it.
I'll move it.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second, accepting the proposal. Any more questions, comments? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5A, consider approving the Broadway House LED lighting project and authorize staff to solicitate bids. Can't even speak this morning.
All right. This project includes converting the interior lights at Broadway House Apartments in the entryways, hallways, stairwells, laundry room, sitting rooms, public restrooms, community room, office, mechanical room, elevator, car, as well as exterior lights in the parking lot area and around the building. Staff has included this project in the 5-year plan in order to utilize capital fund grants to pay for the project. Staff has developed plans and specifications for the project. The current lighting in these areas is primarily fluorescent lighting. Upgrading to LED lighting will reduce energy consumption and result in cost savings on our monthly utility bills going forward. The project is estimated to cost between $15,000 to $20,000. We have enough money left in the 2017 capital fund grant to pay for this project. And upon project completion, we'll apply for PUC rebates, and we estimate that we will receive $1,500 to $2,000 back in rebates.
I'm going to move it. I think it's, makes a lot of sense. We'll probably have payback within 2 to 3 years, I would think, on a.
Yeah, that was my question, was there any calculations as far as what the
Payback time?
payback? Yeah.
I did not
Do
do
that.
that calculation, but I can report back next month if you
I
want.
would bet 2,
Or-
3, 4 years.
Yeah, I'm
5
sure
years
it's going to be
max,
a nice
maybe.
savings, but I was just curious.
Yeah. Why not? So I'll move it.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 5B, consider motion authorizing payment of public housing program claims. Nothing seems to be out of the ordinary. Everything.
I don't see anything there. I'll move them.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6A, consider the Garden Terrace exterior painting project and authorize staff to solicit bids.
All right,
Heather?
another project we're looking at, this is for the Garden Terrace Apartments. The on-site staff over there indicated that the decks were starting to show a lot of wear and tear, and they wanted to know if we could get those repainted this year. I asked the city's facilities maintenance supervisor to go over and take a look at them, and he agreed that it's probably time to look at refinishing those decks. He thought we could probably just do the floors at this time because they wear more quickly. They just take more weathering and wear and tear than the railings. He recommends power washing and repainting the floors for all 88 apartment decks. The apartment decks were last painted in 2011, so it's been about 7 years. He said the life of that kind of thing is usually about 5 years, so another reason he agreed it's probably time to look at it. They have deteriorated significantly. The railings were painted with the last project, but he feels they could be skipped unless you wish to add them to the project and get it all done at one time. We estimate the project to cost $30,000 to $40,000. Adding railings to the project would add to the cost by about $5,000 to $10,000. And Garden Terrace has adequate reserve funds to pay for the project if you wish to move forward.
Wouldn't it look nicer if we did everything all at once?
That's kind of
Yeah, that's why,
Yeah.
I kind of said he
Kind of a
didn't feel they
no-brainer.
needed to be done, but do you want to come back in 2 years, just, you know?
Well, that's what I was thinking too, because I understand it's going to create an inconvenience for the tenants too, to have painting crews, and it'd be better just to have them there once
Mhm.
than maybe 2 separate times. I guess that's my thoughts on it.
Sounds good.
I agree.
Okay, include railings.
Is that your motion?
I would offer the motion to solicit the bids and include doing both the floors and the railings at this time.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any more discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Item 6B, discuss draft rent and down payment program. Heather?
All right, this is just for discussion only. We're just presenting the draft at this time and taking some feedback. We'll go back and make any changes you come up with today, and we'll come back again. And this might go back and forth for several months until we come up with a final version for approval. One of the recommendations I wanted to point out is we are looking at making the program retroactive to January 1st, 2017. This program, I guess I should back up. This program is for tenants at the Garden Terrace Apartments. A portion of their rent would be put into a, I guess in a sense, a savings program for them to use for a down payment on a home purchase. They would have to purchase a home within the New Ulm city limits to be able to use this money. At least that's the way we have it in the draft. That certainly can be changed if you want. The reason we want to make it retroactive to January 1st, 2017 is just to go back for renters that have lived there for quite some time to be able to build up that reserve fund a little bit more quickly. Under the budgetary, we just kind of put best case to worst case scenario. If no one uses the program, the cost would be zero. If every single tenant in the buildings used the program to the full amount, it could cost $444,000 annually. We anticipate, possibly 5 to 10 tenants a year utilizing this program. So realistically, the annual cost for the program is estimated to be anywhere from $0 to $50,000 annually, as the way we have it laid out in the draft now. Just note the EDA could discontinue the program at any time if reserve funds are no longer available to support it, or for any other reason. In this case, the city attorney did recommend grandfathering in current tenants if the program were to be discontinued. He felt that programs that had paid into it and had been promised it should be allowed to use it, but any new tenants who move in wouldn't be able to use it. So just a couple, that was really the only concern legally that he had. So suggested that, but just so they didn't feel like they had been promised something and then had it taken away. So the draft has been included for your review. I did want to just note City Manager Brian Gromitz did have a concern that we wanted to share. He personally isn't a fan of this program. He said the tenants who don't use it for a down payment may feel cheated out of a benefit. If not used, they may want this funding to cover other programs that they can use, or just have their rent reduced. So those were just some concerns he voiced that we wanted you to be aware of. So the the draft is being proposed for you to take a look at. Anything at this time can be changed. It's really just a starting point. The way we have it laid out, it would cap out at $5,000. So depending on which apartment the tenant is in and what they're paying for rent, we've kind of laid out a couple different scenarios as far as how long it would take them to reach the maximum benefit. So just shy of 3 years for the tenants in the one-bedroom apartments that have the lowest rent, about 2 years for a tenant in the two-bedroom paying the higher rent. So there shouldn't be any cost outlay for a period of time because they do need to kind of build that up, but kind of gives you an idea of the timeline. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
Do we know of anybody that works programs similar to this, that we researched, or?
Not that I'm aware of in New Ulm. And
Other cities, or?
I've not heard of this program anywhere in any surrounding areas. Economic Development Director Dalton did work with a program like this in California
Okay.
and basically used that as a model for our program.
Okay.
Are the,
Go ahead.
are the tenants, there, are a lot of the leases just in one name only? Or are there many that have two names on the lease? Would there be any issues where one person moves out and they want to take the accrued funds, but there's still another person who's there? That was one question I had, if that could be an issue, where it's just accrued in one person's name, but there's two tenants leasing the space.
That's a good question, and I'll find that out. I would imagine, I know there's married couples there. I would imagine they're both on the lease. Typically, you would expect if they move out and buy a home, they're doing that together, but families do split. So that's a question we should address.
I guess I echo or with Brian's concerns regarding what it might mean for some of the tenants that wish not to utilize this program. And that's the one comment, because I know we discussed this last month a little bit, and somebody did stop me and say that they didn't think this was a good idea for Garden Terrace. My thought is this, well, a couple things, and maybe I can engage Nicole a little bit. If we were to set this program up, doesn't this effectively become a potential operating expense of having the building? And wouldn't we want to kind of know going forward what our potential liabilities would be with this program?
I think each month or on some kind of annual or monthly basis, we'd have to do some kind of entry or would move this reserved cash into a restricted fund. So it would always be available if someone would decide to use it, and so it would come out of our operating cash.
Right. And that being said, wouldn't we want to go into this with at least some notion of how many potential tenants would be interested in later utilizing the program, so we could effectively accrue for it and get the proper amount of money set aside? To me, that would be one thing that, because it's stating right now that any tenant's just automatically going to be eligible, it really opens that door wide open for us. So I don't think it would take a lot of effort to, at least as a new lease is signed or with the existing tenants, just to have them express their level of interest that, yeah, I definitely would like to participate in this program. We could kind of get an effective head count and then from there start accruing the proper amount of funds.
And I don't know that it would matter what their level of interest is. If every tenant or every resident is automatically enrolled in the program, I think we have to set that money aside for them each month. So it's all going to go in a restricted fund. It's not going to be what we estimate people would use eventually. I think it has to be all of it is obligated
Okay.
for that use.
Is it possible to ask them to sign up for it?
Well, that was one of
That way
the,
you got a little bit of control.
that's one of the thoughts I had, is just to make sure that in order to participate, they definitely have to sign up. I'm assuming that a tenant would have to, at the time they then terminated their lease, be in good standing. We're not going to allow someone to access these monies if we have to evict them or whatever.
Right.
It's in the draft. Residents must fulfill the term of their lease and be in good standing. They must be current with their
Sure.
financial obligations to the city and must follow the proper procedures for terminating their lease, whether it is at lease end or mid-lease.
The other thought I had, going back to what Brian's concerns were, would there be a way we could take this program and kind of incorporate it into the other one we was to discuss today about a down payment assistance program for home buyers, whereas if the person going into looking for home ownership and wanting to participate in the down payment assistance program, if they're a current tenant of Garden Terrace, we could offer them a program within the guise of the down payment assistance program. That might eliminate some of this concern that the existing tenants that don't participate feel they're getting cheated out of something. So I don't know. And maybe it gets too complicated at that point, but and maybe if we decide we want to do it, we just do it, and people are just going to have to accept or not accept it as the terms of being a tenant at Garden Terrace, that, you know, they have this opportunity, because I think it presents a potential for a great path for home ownership, that it would be nice for us owning this asset in the community to say we support people moving from being a renter into being a homeowner, and here's a vehicle that we can put forward to do that. So
And one of the reasons the EDA wanted to get those buildings paid off was to be able to utilize some of their cash to create programs. The reason we're including this as one of our draft programs is so that the tenants of Garden Terrace that are paying rent could potentially see a benefit of the EDA using those funds to create programs, so that they're not feeling like they're not getting anything. Now, if they don't plan to buy a home, they won't, utilize the program, but.
Can we have a limit? Can we have, like, say we max 10?
Well, I was going to suggest that too. If you want to kind of know what your annual liability is, you could say we're going to fund 10 per
Right.
year,
That's what I would
first come, first serve. And if we hit 10, put your name in for next year, or, this is a draft, so we
Draft.
can make changes.
Discussion.
Any changes that are made will again go back to the city attorney to make sure everything's okay.
My other comments were, you have 53 on the waiting list trying to get into Garden Terrace. So I go back and I look at what is our purpose of this particular program. That 53 may become 40 or whatever when we purge it, but still it's 40 people just now waiting to get into Garden Terrace without any incentive. I'm not sure if this is the right program for the right facility.
I don't think the program is to get people to go into it. I think it's a get the
Incentive.
people to get them out of there, in
Yeah.
a way, once they can come up with funds to get out on their own.
I think I mentioned it last time, at least Garden Terrace used to be the kind of place, you retired to Garden Terrace. It's not necessarily that so much anymore.
Yeah, it was when it first opened. It was primarily filled with retirees wanting to downsize, get out of their house. And that was true for a long time. And that group is starting to kind of age out and move into assisted living or nursing homes. And we are seeing a younger group of renters coming in now, families even with small children, in the last 3 to 5 years. So a couple benefits I see of the program is for those younger people moving in, being able to rent for a while, get to know the lay of the town, and if they decide they want to stay here, move them into home ownership. Once people purchase a home, they're less likely to relocate. It's just easier when you're a renter to pick up and move. Once you buy a house, you're a little bit more invested in the community. So that's one benefit. And then the other benefit I see, as Garden Terrace is, 20-some years old now, and a lot of the new apartments being built are brand new, having this program will help us recruit new renters to move in, those younger renters that maybe want to save to build a home. I do see it attracting renters. So moving people out into home ownership opens up an apartment for someone else. They move in, they save for a home, So I see a lot of benefits to it. The people that don't plan to use it probably aren't going to be a fan of the program, but
And I did get, after the newspaper article came out about this discussion, I got calls from people living in Garden Terrace saying, hey, what about us? Kind of what Brian said, and said, hey, we have single pane windows. Can't we upgrade to double pane windows? And why can't some of this money be turned back into upgrading of the entire building? And I think we should probably at least have, before we go too far into this project, take a step back, and is there something like that we should be looking at as an EDA? If it's 20 years old, maybe we do need to be looking at better windows or whatever. I'm not saying that we have to look at windows, but, and
Well, I
don't
mean,
make
we are
that
looking at
assessment.
replacing the 2 garage furnaces, which are going to be expensive, and we are looking at painting the decks. I don't see that we're going to let the buildings fall into disrepair in
Oh,
any
no,
way.
not at all, but
And we are still moving forward with projects. I've got 2 projects right now that we're working on this year that are high-ticket projects. So,
if
I
there's a
guess
large
that's something
upgrade
you can
we've
say
done-
that we are doing, and we are keeping the buildings up.
I don't foresee this program to be a financial burden to us. I think we should really send out a letter to everybody that's there and see what they're interested, if they would be interested or not. I don't think we're gonna have a whole bunch of people jumping in on it, so I think we're still gonna be able
But
to
if it
keep our
helps,
repairs
a
up and everything
few,
else,
yeah.
and still be in good standings.
I agree, and I think the 5 to 10 tenants a year is probably fairly accurate, but my thought is we should simply know, and I think we can best do that by having new tenants and existing tenants, and we can make that retroactive back to 2017 or whatever, give them the ability to apply, and if they apply and want to participate in the program, then I think we're going to definitely know how many people are going to be involved. And that's going to then set aside a specific dollar amount, and then that's going to leave more of the funds if we want to do the upgrades and stuff. Probably the best compromise to get maybe a firm number that we know how many that we're dealing with, and that way we can adequately fund it and then also adequately keep with the various upkeep and things that we want to do to the building to make sure it stays in good shape. So, but I think it's a novel idea, and I think it's something that, and I think, in talking with various groups in the community, there's a great need for new workforce to come into the town, and they're looking for ways to bring in and hire people and to have housing alternatives for them. And I think this would show and make a great step in saying, we're interested in bringing in, young workers, and we want to give them the opportunity to be long-term residents. And for a lot of folks, you start out renting and you end up buying and owning, and that, if we can create that pathway with this, I think it's a great opportunity to at least explore it. So I think definitely we want to keep talking about it.
Yeah, I think it's worth
Moving
talking. My
forward, yeah.
My concern is if we have 40 on the waiting list, now we create this program, now we have 90 on the waiting list. What have we done? We really haven't done
It's a
anything.
good problem to have, though.
It is.
Well,
I mean,
right.
Then we look at our other programs, I suppose. We look at, what else could we do? Like, we talked before about another program of a first-time home buyer program that we totally separate from this. That's a discussion for another day.
No, I think it's on the agenda.
It's next item.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, it's next.
So if we're done with this, we'll move on to the next.
Should we move on to
You
the next
ask,
one?
you ask and we deliver less.
I know, boom, boom.
Yeah, I think if we just get some more information back and then
Okay,
put it
so
back on
you'd,
the agenda for more discussion.
Do we want to
you'd
then
like us
poll
to poll the tenants
I would
and
poll
find
it.
out
have
how
enough
many would use
information
it?
to
and-
poll them? You think you have enough information to poll? If there was a program, would you have an interest? If it was something like this, without giving any promises or?
Send it out as a draft, say this is,
Well, that's what I was gonna say, put a cover letter and send them the draft.
Right.
And say, this is what we're proposing, this is in no way a final version, it has not been approved, but do you like what you see, would you use this?
right. I would say
Something
go
like
for it.
that?
Give them a deadline or,
Mhm.
yeah. Okay.
Anything else, Heather, you need?
I don't think so.
Okay, we'll go on to 6C. Discuss draft homeowners assistant loan program.
What a concept.
Is that what you wanted, Les?
I just wanted to note, I had notes from Brian and Chris, being they weren't able to be here today. Again, this is a draft only for discussion, changes can be made. One of the things Chris wanted to have you guys discuss and think about is, again, how many loans per year do you think you would want to fund? keep in mind, there would be no revenue receiving back in. This is kind of a revolving loan. So until the payments would start, there'd be no revenue coming back into the loan fund. So keep that in mind. And also another item for consideration, how long to deter the payments, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, or whatever. I think he has it set up in the draft that it's a 10-year loan. Payments wouldn't start until the end of the first 5 years. That could be adjusted if you want payments coming back in sooner. He just thought give the homeowner time to adjust to making that mortgage payment before they had to add this additional loan payment. If you set the loan up for 10 years, the payment would be $84 a month. If you wanted to make it a 5-year payback, the payment would be $167 a month. So just to give you an idea of what the homeowner obligation would be depending on the term of the loan or whatever you decide. So I guess we should go over the overview. So this is a home buyer assistance loan program. Again, the city attorney has reviewed the draft. He mentioned we may need to disclose to loan applicants that any loan forgiveness that they receive may be considered taxable income by the IRS. He would also need to prepare necessary paperwork for the EDA to have a lien on the property during the term of the loan. In the event that the home would be sold before the loan's been paid back, we would get paid back immediately upon sale, those sorts of things. Again, we'll take your feedback, come back with an updated version of the draft at the next meeting. Again, we have in this stipulation in this loan program, the home purchase has to be within the New Ulm city limits. Of course, that can be changed. The program is set up, like I mentioned, to be a revolving loan program. The EDA cost would be the initial loan balance amount to be discussed and set prior to the program start date. So Chris, again, took a program that he was familiar with in California and used that to model our draft. He put in a lot of stipulations and just to kind of cover everything. But if you don't want it to be this complicated, we can take anything out and scale it back if you want to simplify it. He just kind of wanted to put everything in there and then let you decide what you want to do from there.
Has our city attorney looked at it?
He has, yes.
Okay.
That's where I mentioned the disclosure, because there is a portion of the loan he has in here. If you're a New Ulm High School graduate and you have a 4-year college degree, you're eligible for loan forgiveness up to $5,000, $1,000 to be forgiven every year up for 5 years. So if we leave that in there and they do get some loan forgiveness, that portion of the loan might be taxable. And so that's where the city attorney said we should disclose that so that people are aware of that up front.
Did either one of them, or Nicole, did you have any concept of a dollar amount for this program?
It would depend on if you put, a limit on it, how many you were going to do every year.
You didn't have a recommendation, though?
Right. And I don't know, it's stating up to $10,000, but I don't know what criteria. Could anybody who comes in and qualifies then simply ask for and get the $10,000? Do we know, or?
I don't think we have any income limits tied to this.
Okay, well, and that's one thing that I would think that we would want to look at doing, is maybe making it a program. I looked at this and compared it to like some of the existing first mortgage programs they have for affordable home purchases.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where there's several things that I think we'd want to maybe consider making some changes.
Mhm.
And I don't know, I mean, we should discuss, number one, if we want it to be specific for first-time buyers, or do we want to open it to allow anybody who's a qualified purchaser, whether or not they've owned a home in the past, to be eligible? The other thing that I would look at, it would be, we should make this assistance loan program based on a percentage of the purchase price of the home that a potential home buyer is looking at. That way we can limit it to the purchase price, and that we could leverage the money out further rather than just have everyone come in and get $10,000 each. That money's going to go a lot further if we can limit it to a percentage possibly of the purchase price. The other thing that I had concerns about would be that it says that the person has to be a resident of New Ulm for at least 6 months. If somebody's coming to town and wanting to buy a home because they've taken on a new job, I don't know if we'd want to have that residency requirement. I guess that's something we could discuss as well, but the 8 hours of in-home or in-person home ownership training, we do that, and I don't know if you do it, Jessica, it's online now.
I wasn't familiar with that. I don't really handle the home loans at our bank, but
Okay.
that was one thing I was questioning, was what that entails.
Well, just two things. The time commitment for 8 hours, I imagine they may have to go to 3 or 4 classroom sessions, at a 2 or 3 hour crack or whatever and that's going to create a time commitment for working folks and having the kids go to daycare. And so we've seen is that a lot of these homebuyer education courses are online now, and they can be done on the internet at home or at a time and they just have to simply come in before the loan closing with a certificate that they've completed the program. So that would be something I think we would want to look at further. And then I don't know if those programs come with a cost to enroll, who would bear that cost. We want to try to not create additional burdens if we can't. Buying a home is already an expensive enough endeavor, so if we don't want to add additional costs to that if we don't have to. And I know the online ones are for free, or they can enroll for free. So
we can just make it that they have to complete the free training.
home buyer course and get a certificate and present that before final commitment of funds or something like that. Yeah. The 5-year loan deferment is what I would recommend. If it's 5 years or greater in terms of before they begin repayment, then we don't have to consider that monthly debt obligation in their qualifying debt payments for when they initially get approved for their first mortgage financing. So I think that the 5-year period is probably one that we would want to try to consider. I think that would correspond and work into the existing affordable mortgage products that are out there for the first mortgage loans that are available. The other thing that I kind of took exception to is the having the 4-year college degree for New Ulm students. I think any high school student that completes any sort of qualified program, be it a 2-year or 4-year, if they come back to and work our community, if we want to consider that program, I don't necessarily think it should be just simply a college graduate. But
I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to.
Okay, good.
Because
we need a lot of
fees in town and stuff like that. I think we're getting away. We do need the blue collar workers. We don't need everybody
Absolutely.
that goes to college. I mean,
Right.
sorry, but we need people in our factories.
And I think that the forgiveness part of it is, and Heather's already identified that, a potential tax situation. So I think we'd want to be careful that people understood that if they go into the loan forgiveness, it may come with some tax consequences.
So if, just one question I have, if we make the term of the loan 5 years, does?
No, the repayment starts after 5 years. It'd be probably a 10-year term with a deferred payment
Oh,
until
all
5
right.
years in.
Okay, and that's the
Okay.
way we have it laid out, correct?
Exactly.
Okay,
I think that's a good way to put it.
okay.
Okay, the only other thing that I had is, I know you have the city staff would do an inspection for lead-based paint. And I think this creates a potential problem with any home purchaser because this would create, in my mind, a home inspection, and that's something that's negotiated between a buyer and seller, and they would stipulate that in a purchase contract, and that this would create a situation where it'd be a mandated inspection. And I know the intent is good in terms of looking for and reviewing for lead-based paint, but I think that's pretty well covered. Any home that's going to be financed is going to have an appraisal, and an appraiser's going to note any chipped and peeling paint and put in a work order to have that completed. And I think a common thing we see today is the realtors, if it's listed, they're going to be well aware of the fact that any chipped and peeling paint is going to need to be addressed before a home is going to be sold anyway and closed. So most realtors will talk to their sellers and get that sort of issue addressed prior to. So I don't necessarily know if we want to have the city staff do the paint and the inspection in that capacity.
Would that include the building and health and safety code deficiencies? You want to remove that whole bullet?
I don't know. Would they issue it like a certificate of occupancy then? Are we staffed to do that? Do we have the legal obligation and want to do that? Normally that's done with new construction, so I don't know if that, for this program, if that's something we want to do or not. I guess I'm just bringing it up that normally when someone purchases a home, they can hire and engage a home inspector to go through and do a proper inspection. And in the context of the contract, a dollar amount is established between buyer and seller that if there are any sorts of work items that need to be addressed, a dollar limit is set in the contract, so it doesn't come back later between the buyer and seller, and then it kind of breaks down. Everybody kind of knows going into it what the expectations are. So
I think Chris's idea was that if they're going to be getting city funds to get into the house, we want to kind of bring it up to code as part of that.
What are you saying, city
Yeah.
inspector, or the inspections are going to catch that anyway?
if there's one that a seller asks for a buyer wants and a seller agrees to in the terms of their purchase contract.
I don't believe city staff has anyone that inspects for lead-based paint. Just working with the Section 8 program, that's not something we've been able to get help from city staff on. So I definitely think we should remove that.
Well, I think, couldn't we just require that all homes in this program require an inspection? And then it's between the seller and the buyer of who's gonna
And then that's
have to
gonna,
work it out.
right, and that will add to the cost.
It will.
Yeah.
Well, but most have them anyway, right?
I would say that more often than not, that's
Right.
being more and more common.
I haven't been out of that world for quite a while.
So could I just remove the by city staff and have it,
Well, they could provide a home inspection report.
home buyer must schedule an inspection. Just take out the part about the city staff.
Well, and that was the thing, I don't know if the city staff, would they charge a fee for their time for doing it if they were to undertake the inspection? And
I don't think so, because we would be asking them to do that as part of our program, so it would be kind of an internal customer service they'd be providing to the EDA.
So it could say something like unless already.
I don't know how you want to.
Well, that's something you could work out later, though. You
Yeah.
don't have to do it here. You know what the intent is of what we're looking for.
the last thing I have is, and I've seen this in my experience with, these would take a subordinate lien position, and if a homeowner down the road would want to refinance their first mortgage, under what terms and stipulations would the city program agree to subordinate their loans? There have been issues in the past where if people want to come in and refinance their first mortgage and they want to take equity out to pay off credit card debt, for instance, a holder of a subordinate lien position would tend to frown upon that because they don't want the equity to be spent on those sorts of things. So I would stipulate that we'd want to, right from the inception, kind of make under what circumstances the city would agree to subordinate their debt, and maybe we'd want to engage the city attorney to maybe go through some of those situations to make sure that everyone going into it understands exactly under what terms and conditions we would agree to subordinate down the road.
And I'm okay with your recommendations, other than, I know you said you weren't sure on if it was a first-time home buyer or not. I really would like to see us keep it to a first-time home buyer, just because we don't have a ton of money. We need to limit it. I think my goal would be to see those first-time home buyers and get them into our homes, into our community, and move them into home ownership. So my personal belief is to keep that to that group of individuals. So I don't know how the rest of the board feels.
it says within the last 3-year period. So, maybe they owned a home, lost it in the housing crash, but now they're back on their feet and want to buy a house again. It says in here. So I'm just pointing that out. It says during the 3-year period preceding the purchase of the property, first-time home buyer within the last 3 years.
But
So they were a homeowner, they went back to renting, they've been renting for 10 years, they want to buy a house again.
We haven't decided.
Or do you
on
just
what-
want it to be flat
It's
out,
another
you've never
discussion.
in your life owned a home?
isn't,
I'm saying first-time home buyer.
I think it would just simplify it, make it more clear.
Could we always add and change it in a couple of years? Sure, we could.
Okay.
If it's real popular or not
So I
popular.
need to take that part out. Okay.
I mean, we don't want to make it too restrictive, but,
And we want it simple, too.
right.
Well, and we probably want to talk about numbers too at some point, and maybe this isn't the right time, but my thought would be we may want to commit to funding this in 5-year increments so that by the time the 5 years is up, we'd start seeing payback on that
Some of it.
first 5-year, allocation or whatever. And I have a feeling that the money, it's going to get used up, and then it's going to be waiting for the next funding cycle. And I don't know if we go January 1 to January 1, but that's been my experience too, is that when they have these programs, the people are waiting in line to use them. So I think by and large, it should be fairly popular, and hopefully we have enough homes out there for people to buy. So that's our other issue, so.
Right. And that was the only other area that, I'm like, 5 years before you start paying back on the loan? That seems to be a long time. 3 years was kind of in my head when I read it, and I was like, 5 years?
Well,
So I'd want a little more discussion, maybe not today, but at some point on that particular.
if they were to sell the home within the first 5 years, the full amount gets paid back.
Yep.
And you're probably going to see some people within that first 5 years maybe upgrading, and then we would get full repayment on that
Okay.
at that time. But then, for those that choose to stay a more long-term basis, then it's going to kick into that repayment mode. And it just gives them the time to kind of get themselves established and,
But 5 years, I mean, the first couple of years, you get established, you get your home the way you want it. But after 5 years, or after 3 years, you're pretty settled in your home.
you'd like to think so, yeah.
Maybe not, I don't know.
Well, like I said before, too, the 5-year is what's established for the affordable mortgage products for first-time and first mortgage loans. And for some reason, that they've stipulated that has to be a deferred payment for 5 years on these down payment assistant loans, so.
Would it get really complicated if they start paying back some after year 3 and then or a larger payment at year 5? I don't know,
Like a graduated payment program, no,
I don't know, maybe another discussion point.
yeah.
That might be easier on the homeowner than versus that big jump in year 5. Put that down for another discussion point. And we're missing a couple board members. I think we want to get their input on some of this too. So maybe we can just add these bullet points for next month.
I should point out one other thing the city attorney brought up is, and so we added something in here to kind of address that. He was concerned there might be people using this to buy property and then turn it into a rental. So we did add a requirement that it must be owner occupied for the life of the loan, to avoid that. Now, if we're requiring them to be a first-time home buyer, I don't know that we'd have a lot of issues with that,
Well, you could.
but it doesn't hurt to have that in there.
Yeah, I agree.
Anybody else have any more questions for Heather? Huh? We'll go on to item number 7. From the Economic Development Director, Assistant City Manager regarding activities during the month of June 2018. You have it in front of you. Accept the motion.
Do we know what's going on? And you could probably help us with that with our EDC.
Mm-hmm.
Can you fill us in with what they're doing?
The last I'd heard, we're still in negotiations with the city on the sale of the lot for the DLC expansion.
Okay.
And we are meeting on Thursday, I think, to hopefully finalize that.
What about with the overall management of that?
Still kind of trying to formulate a new strategic plan for that, yeah.
Right.
What our way forward is gonna be. I think they're still working on some of that.
Okay. Just curious.
Well, I think what they were looking at is, divesting themselves of the land that they owned and to see that, and then if they've got those funds available, what they're gonna do with those funds and other funds in terms of creating some economic development programs. So part of it's gonna be getting that taken care of, and then from there, seeing what we've got and then moving forward, so.
Okay, sounds great.
I'll offer a motion to accept the economic development report for June of 18.
I will second.
We have a motion and a second to accept the report. Any more discussion?
I have a question. Was
ahead.
it last month we didn't have a quorum at the end of the meeting? I didn't know if we need to pass, or we need to do anything
It
with
was,
that.
this item, we only had 3 members present, so it wasn't officially accepted.
I didn't know if we had to
The
address
report,
it or
I didn't
not.
bring it back for approval. I don't know that it's necessary. I mean, in the minutes, we just basically say the report was given. We don't
You're okay. You're okay.
Okay.
usually.
Good to check on that, though.
Sounds good. With no more business, meeting adjourned.
Do we take the motion? We didn't vote.
Did we vote?
No.
No.
Oh. All in favor, say aye.
I
Opposed, no? Now we're adjourned.
Sorry, I interrupted.
Outta here.
Jesse.